really am going to try to not get mad when I talk about this. Boxing is so rigged, man. It's worse than pro wrestling. At least pro wrestling, you're guaranteed a good show usually with a predetermined outcome. This fight had a predetermined outcome, whether both participants knew it or not. The Tyson Fury was going to win by decision if it went to a decision. Didn't matter what happened in the fight. Didn't matter at all. Francis Ngannou had one chance to win, and that was to knock him out. Not even counting the fact, so much of it was rigged, man. How about the elbow Tyson Fury threw that was blatantly an elbow? He was not attempting to land a punch. Francis had closed the distance too close to him. He throws a half-ass overhand right that's only meant to land an elbow. They teach you that in boxing, how to kind of use your elbows if you miss a punch. Although he obviously wasn't trying to land a punch. He was basically just throwing an elbow, which is a cheap shot by anybody's measurement, It's not a cheap shot in the UFC. It's a great move in the UFC, but this wasn't a UFC fight. So the ref, okay, I guess you can say the ref didn't see it, whatever. Still a cheap shot. The knockdown in boxing, I'm sure a lot of you guys know how boxing scoring works. Knockdown makes the round 10-8 automatically. One knockdown does. So Francis knocked him down in the third round, so that automatically is a 10-8 round, meaning even if Francis had lost the first two rounds, they are now even going into round 4, which he didn't lose the first two rounds. Not on my scorecard. Anything with Bob Arum involved is going to be a scam. It's always, boxing's been that way. It's always going to be that way. I can't even believe it survives as a sport. They cost Francis Ngannou tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars by ripping him off. That would have been one of the greatest accomplishments in sports history, definitely in combat sports history, for a guy who's 0-0 in professional boxing to go knock out the guy who's considered, I keep hearing he's the greatest heavyweight ever. He's not the greatest heavyweight ever. Not even close. I don't care what his record is. He's not a bad boxer. Tyson Fury is a big dude. He moves well for a big guy. He's not the greatest heavyweight in history. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But everybody that comes along is the new greatest. Kamaru Usman's the greatest welterweight, allegedly, in UFC history, even though he's not as good as George St. Pierre. And the next great 170-pound welterweight who wins 8 fights in a row will be the greatest, the greatest welterweight in history. It's just always, whatever's the latest is always the greatest. That rhymed unintentionally. But that fight, I thought when I watched the fight, I was thinking, man, I called this exactly how it was going to go. And then I listened back to myself on my podcast on MMA Roasted, and it wasn't exactly how I called it, so I guess I was wrong. But I was right in the respect that I said if Francis Ngannou could land clean on him early, he would drop him. And I said if Deontay Wilder could drop Fury, that Francis Ngannou could drop him. And I was right on that. I was so happy when he landed, and the look on Tyson Fury's face was priceless. That look, it's been the look a lot of UFC guys have had when Ngannou hits him, like that look like, holy shit, what was that? But he was very timid after that. Tyson Fury was. Tyson Fury was not in shape coming into this fight. Ngannou looked a little gassed, but not as gassed as Fury. And something I did find interesting, I know I'm jumping all around here, but it happens when I get irritated. Something I found interesting was that during the 9th and 10th round, unless I'm crazy, I heard Tyson Fury's corner tell him not to take any risks and just stay away from, more or less just stay away from Ngannou, because they said something like, we already have this one, or this one's already in the bag, something like that. We've already got this, don't take any chances. I need to confirm that, but, maybe I dreamed it, but I was pretty sure I heard that in the corner. And when I thought I heard it, I was like, wait, did they just say that we've already got this one? How could they possibly think that? They would have had to have believed they were down on the scorecards at that point. I mean, you would have to believe. Going into the 9th round and 10th round, you would have to think you're down. The reason I know that not only was it rigged, but that Tyson Fury knew the judges were going to rig it for him was because he had no sense of desperation at any point in the fight. Not in the 9th, not in the 10th. The last round, you've got to think, if you're Tyson Fury, I can't take a chance on this guy ruining my legacy. an 0-0 fighter. I can't take any chance. I got to go out here and try to knock this guy out because I'm probably down on the scorecards. He's no dummy. And as a fighter, you're not a dummy. And as a fighter, you know when you're winning, you know when you're losing. There are guys that are delusional that think they want to fight until they rewatch it back. And then some guys are delusional even after they fight. They think they won. But as a fighter, you know when you're losing, and he knew he was losing and had no sense of desperation whatsoever. And if he was indeed that tired and just didn't have it in him to go after Francis in the 9th and 10th, then he definitely lost. But I don't care what their punch stat numbers say. It looks like the stats were, all close to the same. The only punches that landed of any consequence were by Ngannou. The elbow by Fury was pretty good. He maybe had a couple other shots that landed decent on Ngannou, but Francis landed several punches. And, the knockdown tells the story of the whole fight. Like that's when everything changed. I also want to take a minute here to, and I'm cherry picking the numbers a little bit, but I put this on Twitter. Looking at the scorecards from Juan Carlos Pelayo, the genius who scored the fight for Fury, 96-93. According to his scorecard, even if Ngannou had also knocked down Fury in the 2nd and the 8th round, so the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 8th, he knocked him down the 3rd, but let's just say for argument's sake, he also knocked him down in the 2nd and the 8th. For 3 total knockdowns, he still would have lost the fight on Pelayo's scorecard. He still would have lost 94-93. So that goes to show you, imagine Ngannou had knocked him down 3 times and Pelayo still says Fury wins. That alone will tell you it was rigged. Even if Ngannou had knocked down Fury twice in the 3rd, and again in the 2nd and 8th also, so if he knocked him down the 2nd and then knocked him down twice in the 3rd and once in the 8th, so 4 knockdowns, he still would have had a draw. So that would have ended up being a draw on Pelayo's scorecard. That would have been enough to give Ngannou the win on the other, the other 2 cards. But as far as Pelayo was concerned, even with 4 knockdowns for Ngannou, it still would have gone to a draw on his card. That's how ridiculous his scoring was. There's any number of ways you can do it, but basically, there was no way Ngannou was going to win on his scorecard. The judge who scored it, I think, what was it, 94 or 95, 94 or 93, 94, whatever it was, for Fury, you can make an argument that, he was a little more fair. 1 round went one way, 1 round went the other way, whatever. Like he could have seen it a little bit differently, but it's still rigged. He was just smart enough to make it a little bit closer. But that was not, it was a close fight to a degree, but it still should have been a unanimous decision for Ngannou. Anyone watching that fight, he at least won by 1 point, any way you look at it, like at least, with the knockdown, he gets the 10-8 round there. There's 9 rounds left. So you can't tell me he didn't win 4 of those 9 rounds. And that's all he would have had to done. He would have had to win 4 of the remaining 9 rounds, besides the one with the knockdown, and he wins the fight, 3 of the remaining 9 rounds, I believe, he would have had a draw. So kind of shows you where their whole system is. But anything with, like I said, anything with Bob Arum involved is bound to be crooked. It's disgusting, really. I did hear some interesting news listening on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani in his interview with Francis Ngannou. I thought the perfect next fight, because I know Fury's not going to fight him again, not anytime soon. But I thought the perfect next fight would be Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou. But apparently the fight that's being talked about is that fight, Deontay Wilder and Francis Ngannou, but in MMA, which won't be a close fight. Ngannou will dominate him, but that's even better for Ngannou. I thought a boxing match with Deontay Wilder, he could make a solid 20-25 million easy, and that'd be a really entertaining fight to watch because someone's probably getting knocked out in that fight either way. But in MMA, that's an even more brilliant move for Ngannou. All these guys out here that crack me up, man. All these guys that thought that we're going around saying Ngannou, because he turned down an $8 million fight with John Jones, that wouldn't be happening now anyway because John Jones is injured. but he turned down that fight. He was going to regret it. Biggest mistake of his life. What an idiot. He thinks he can box with Tyson Fury. Francis Ngannou bet on himself, and unlike a thick boy we know that bets on himself all the time, he hit the jackpot, man. He made a reported 10 million plus the other night for the boxing match. In a rematch with Tyson Fury, you got to think he's going to get 3 times that if Fury will take the rematch. If not, he has basically set himself up to, have generational wealth from this point on. He got a $2 million signing bonus with the PFL. He just made $10 million with Fury. He should make $20 million, I would think, on his next fight. Unless it's MMA against Deontay Wilder, then I don't know how that will do or sell pay-per-view wise. But he's got at least a couple more boxing matches in him that will pay him big, big money. Obviously, the biggest one's going to be a rematch with Fury, if Fury will box him. And, if they fight again, Fury might very well take him to school, as he said he was going to do, if he comes in better shape and takes the fight more seriously. But I couldn't have been happier, man. I wasn't always the biggest Francis Ngannou fan, but I couldn't have been happier with how the whole thing worked out. I don't really like Tyson Fury. I like his dad even less, and his younger brother even less than the dad. They just get on my nerves. But